There are a bunch of hidden mechanics and really important tips you can easily overlook in Black Myth Wukong. It took me a little while to realize that you can actually do a sort of hidden double jump to get up onto high ledges. You've probably come across some spots like this where you can't quite jump high enough to get up to an annoying enemy. But I finally figured out that if you jump and then hit heavy attack in the air, the animation will boost you up quite a bit higher. So you can get up there and take them out, but this also lets you get up on high rooftops and access some areas more easily and much faster than going around the long way like the game wants you to. And if you need to get over to a ledge that's a bit far away, you can actually dash horizontally through the air by using the Cloud Step spell in the air after jumping. Now, I mentioned in my last video that in addition to gaining will, collecting the green spirits you find out exploring also gives you a healing charge back in your gourd. But I realized later that these spirits actually come in 1, 2, or 3 charge variations. If you look closely before absorbing them, you'll see some have 1 or 2 additional wisps, and each individual one counts for a healing charge. So definitely make sure to check to see how many charges you're about to absorb before you grab them. And if you could use the healing, consider drinking from your gourd to make room for the additional charges. I'm sure you've also found at least a few meditation spots so far, which give some easy extra sparks you can use to unlock more skills. But there are anywhere between 3 and 6 meditation spots per region, and while some are pretty obvious, there are others you can easily miss. So to see if you've got them all, you can check your journal to see how many are in each region and then go hunt down any you're missing. I'll leave a link to a guide in the description in case you need some help finding any. Now, if you've arrived in the desert region for chapter 2, you've probably started coming across these enemies with shields, and also probably already figured out that you just need to beat down the shield enough until it breaks before you can easily get at the enemy. In addition to the enemy's health bar, there's a secondary bar to show the shield's health. You might have also figured out that you can move around to their side or back to get around the shield and deal damage to them directly. But there's a better and faster way to deal with the shield. Once you defeat a main story boss towards the end of chapter 2, which you can't miss, you'll get the Rock Solid spell. The best way to use Rock Solid in any situation is to time it like a parry. You want to trigger it just before an enemy hits you, but when you do that with the shield enemies, it will either destroy their shield or blast it out of their hands. Now, that's particularly useful on the spearbone enemies because they're actually pretty weak once you destroy their shield, and they're a pretty good way to farm mind cores. Mind cores are what you use to craft celestial medicine for yourself, which permanently increases your health, mana, stamina, or other stats. You've probably already found a few of these celestial pills in the fancy pots right after boss fights, but you can actually craft them for yourself once you meet Shoe Dog in the second region. He starts off near the village entrance shrine in a cave, and once you take care of a mini boss nearby for him, you'll be able to craft mortal medicines at any shrine, which are definitely underrated, and we'll talk more about those in a minute. But you'll also be able to craft celestial medicine if you go find him in his cave at the cellar shrine. So if you're feeling a bit underleveled at any point, it's smart to go take down some of these spear bones and other enemies in the area to farm up some mind cores, and then go craft some celestial pills with Shoe Dog. The drop rate isn't great, but you should get a mind core every 10 or 15 kills or so. Don't forget you can use the Incense Trail Talisman, which you get for free at the start of the game, to quickly respawn and reset all the enemies so you don't have to keep running back to a shrine to rest. And also keep in mind that just like your skills, you can actually reset celestial medicines anytime to reallocate your mind cores if you decide a different distribution would be better for you. Crafting celestial medicines with Shoe Dog is a much better way to boost your stats compared to dumping sparks into the survival skills like Robust Constitution. These skills make such a small difference that I really think you're better off using those sparks elsewhere. Now, like I mentioned, Shoe Dog also unlocks your ability to craft mortal medicines, which I think a lot of players sleep on. These medicines can give really strong temporary boosts in combat, especially when you stack them, so you don't want to ignore them. The ingredients for mortal medicines are all the plants and fungi you find while exploring, so you definitely want to snag those anytime you see them, especially since it takes a full hour for them to respawn. Now, I wouldn't waste medicines on fighting regular enemies, but they can really make a big difference in boss fights, and there's 4 early medicines you're going to want to stack. The Evil Repelling Medicament reduces damage you take, so it will help keep you alive. On the flip side, Tiger Subduing Pellets increase your damage output by 8 points, which is okay, but you can buy the enhanced version from JorRaptor for 900 will, and those increase your attack by 15, which is much more significant. You can also find the formula for the enhanced versions near the Bitter Lake Shrine in the 3rd region, so you can craft them yourself and not have to spend will on them. By the way, if you need some more will, don't be afraid to cash in your piece of gold items. I was hanging on to these for a while, but they aren't used for anything else, so it's okay to just sell them. Now, you also have Amplification Pellets, which boost your critical hit chance. Critical hits are higher damage hits that randomly occur based on your critical hit chance stat, and by default, they boost your damage by 30%. That's what the critical hit damage 130% means. But if you take an Amplification Pellet, your crit chance increases by 10%, so those higher damage hits will happen more often. An additional 10% chance to crit doesn't sound like a lot, but the effect lasts about a full minute, and the extra critical hits really do add up when you're in a boss fight where you're probably landing a lot of hits over time. And if you get lucky enough to get a crit on a powerful move, like a fully charged focus heavy attack, an extra 30% on that can be massive. You can tell you got a critical hit when you see a gold damage number, but damage numbers are off by default, so you might want to go into the gameplay settings here and turn that on. Now, the last basic medicine to stack is the Longevity Decoction, which you need to purchase from JorRaptor, and this one temporarily boosts your maximum health. So I set up all 4 of these medicines in my slots, and I pop one of each right before heading into a boss fight. It can be difficult to pull off drinking medicines in the middle of a fight, so I find downing all 4 right beforehand is the most reliable way to utilize them. However, you can very easily burn through a lot of medicines using them every time you attempt a boss, and then you'll be stuck facing the boss without that extra boost. So what I do is I don't use any medicines on my first few attempts while I learn the boss's patterns. And then once I feel like I have a good battle plan, then I start popping my set of 4 medicines to give myself a boost and make everything easier. Or if you have an attempt that's going well where you didn't pop any medicines, you could potentially pop at least 1 or 2 mid-fight if you get a chance to help make sure you can finish it off. But still, even if you manage your medicine use well, you're going to need a constant stream of ingredients once you start using them regularly. The 6 ingredients you're going to need for the 4 potions I mentioned are licorice, fragrant jade flower, snakehead mushrooms, aged ginseng, purple linksy, and jade lotus. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, it seems to take a full hour for plants to respawn out in the world, so it's not very easy to farm them. I'll link a guide that shows which plants spawn in which regions below. And remember, there's also a few for sale at the shrine store. But the best way to reliably get ingredients is by growing them with Chen Loong in the Zodiac Village. To get access to Chen Loong, as soon as you land on shore with the turtle a little ways into chapter 3, you'll know what I'm talking about when you get there. Immediately turn around and run towards the shoreline to find him standing in the water. You'll have to battle him first, but then he'll tell you he needs a pill from Shoe Dog. So head to JorRaptor and select the talk option in his menu to grab the pill. Then you can head back and hand it over to Chen Loong. This will unlock the Zodiac Village, where all the NPC merchants you've met will gather in one place, which is super convenient. To start growing medicine ingredients with Chen Loong, you just need to hand over any seeds you have in your inventory, and you can come back every so often to harvest them repeatedly. Growing medicine ingredients with Chen Loong does help keep your resource count up a bit, and each time you harvest, you actually also have a chance to get a new soak for your gourd drink, so it's definitely worth seeking him out. Oh, and you'll get seeds randomly from picking plants you find out exploring, and I also noticed you'll rarely get them from breaking pots. But I'm sure you've also come across some of these guys who like to pretend to be a plant. I think it's kind of fun to fight them, but if you want to avoid them, there is actually a way to tell if a plant is real or just one of these goons. The mushrooms are probably the easiest because you can see the enemy's shoulder poking out of the ground a bit. Plants in the snow are also pretty easy because the snow right around the plant will be clearly disturbed when you walk up to it. The tricky ones are plants other than mushrooms out in the dirt, but you can spot these as well by noticing the dead leaves scattered around the plant, as if the enemy was trying to make the ground look natural. Now, similar to using medicines, you're also going to want to make sure you don't ignore upgrading your gourd, selecting a better drink, and adding good soaks. Early on, you're not going to have many gourds to choose from, so you'll have to just upgrade the default gourd a couple of levels. You'll need to go back to Shen Monkey from the Marsh of the White Mist Shrine to do gourd upgrades. Now, gourd upgrades do cost valuable Lugia fragrant vines. I think there's enough in the whole game to do all the gourd upgrades, but I'm not sure, and I haven't found anyone that can confirm that yet. I'll leave a guide for the known locations for the vines below, but maybe just do 1 or 2 gourd upgrades on the default gourd for now. I do still think spending a few vines on the default gourd is worth it. The extra healing charges make a huge difference in tougher boss fights until you can get better drinks and gourds later on. But even without any gourd upgrades, you can get a better drink pretty early in just the second region. The lamb brew heals you 20% instantly and then takes a few seconds to heal an additional 25% in increments after that. So a total of 45% compared to the coconut wine's base of 33%. You can also upgrade your drinks with awakened wineworms, but there are better drinks later on and it doesn't seem like there's many wineworms in the game. So I would hold off on upgrading drinks until later. All the more reason to use the lamb brew over the coconut wine early on. To get it, head over to the village entrance shrine in the second region and then turn to run up these stairs and head left along the path. You'll get down to a wooden bridge which you want to cross and then head up the hill past the super annoying rat archers and into an alcove at the top. The lamb brew is at the top of the stairs sitting at the base of the stone altar. You always want to make sure you've got a good soak added to your drink as well. Soaks are basically enhancements for your drinks. Unfortunately, a few of the good ones you can get early are randomly given when looting plants in the environment, like the goat skull, which licorice plants can randomly spawn as. I'll leave a guide for all the soaks linked below, but the 2 best ones you can reliably get early on are the celestial lotus seeds, which you can buy from Shen Monkey, and the iron pellet, which you can buy from the man in stone. I prefer the iron pellet because you get a pretty nice defensive buff each time you take a sip from the gourd, and it also lets you drink without being interrupted by attacks. I think a lot of players probably aren't using vessels very much or at all because they're locked behind the secret boss in each region, but these things can be really good. I particularly like the Wind Tamer. It has a passive effect that's active all the time that slightly reduces damage you take, and it will also temporarily give you a much larger damage reduction when you trigger it. Plus, I've noticed if you trigger it close enough to an enemy, the flash it emits will stun them briefly and interrupt pretty much any attack. You can even use this to interrupt really powerful boss attacks. And the Wind Tamer also gives you an edge in the final boss fight of Region 2 because it gives you immunity to strong winds. Now, to get the Wind Tamer, you need to get into the secret region in Chapter 2, and to do that, you need to complete the quest for the Drunken Boar, which you start by talking with him over here near the Rockrest Flat Shrine. I'll link a quest guide below in case you need some help. But even if you don't have any vessels to use yet, I'm pretty sure you're using your spells like Immobilize. And once you're level 40 or 50 or so, I would highly recommend dumping a bunch of sparks into the Immobilize upgrade tree because these skills make it way stronger. In particular, you really want Evanescence. To trigger this, you need to use Immobilize right as an enemy is attacking. If you do that, the Immobilization will last longer and you'll also get a really nice damage boost while the enemy is still immobilized. It's very easy to fall into a pattern of using Immobilize kind of whenever you have it to control the fight, which certainly isn't a bad strategy, but you definitely want to get in a habit of trying to be more tactical with your immobilizations once you have this skill to maximize damage. You've probably also noticed that once you invest enough sparks on the Staff Stances page, you'll unlock the final level of Focused Attack, which seems to indicate you'll get a 4th Focus Charge dot, but you won't actually see one show up. Instead, the entire focus gauge, like including the stance icon and everything, basically acts as the 4th charge indicator. If you already have 3 dots charged up and you manage to fully build up the focus meter again, you'll see the entire gauge turn gold and you'll hear a chime sound. Doing a heavy attack with the gauge fully charged like this unleashes a super powerful attack, but unlike the first 3 charges, this final charge will only stick around for a few seconds. So you have to use it really quickly or you'll lose it, and you'll see the focus meter starting to drop back down. Now, I wouldn't try to go for this fully overcharged focus attack all the time, because you're honestly probably going to waste opportunities to get in more total damage with multiple uses of abilities like Resolute Strike and Skyfall Strike. which you can use with just 1 or 2 focus charges. But it is worth knowing that the fully overcharged focus attack can actually interrupt some of the most powerful boss attacks, while the level 1, 2, or 3 focus attacks just can't. Now, Resolute Strike and Skyfall Strike are a little trickier to pull off, but varied combos like these are really key for dealing more damage and getting better at combat. So I'll leave this video right here for you where I break down exactly how Resolute Strike and Skyfall Strike work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there in just a second.